Good afternoon. Ngasi ako yung thangare Public Administration di class. Code na PPSC 31131. Perspectives on Public Administration. The Block Free Public Policy di Unit Mapan Suba Policy Science Approach. Now, mamang ito na ako na topic parado na Public Policy Approach. Public Policy na karam-karam mamiyang okay? Haino na inagib ni Aji ako na tawdoribis na ngasi tawdoribis na public policy sa karam na yeng ba yaba yeng ba di ko na miyeng sing na taba tabak ko na tabo madam na karam na tabo da haba miyeng sing da in policy de policy science tangay pati sa kari di man ang mamangi da ko na nagib approaches side theories models and approaches of the public policies have been useful for explaining important aspects of public policy ko kan di kana tabo na tiyo mo to kamaina tawbano kari tawbano karamna torapano habili miyengda yengbagi dikane tawbado makhoi thabak tawbagi mawongda karamna yengba tawbya bage tawgadage haiduna nainara ko mawongdadi mapung phati baduna but fail to explain all the phenomena that comprises public policy process so akona ji tawdori parase kumna jam samada de public policy gi kanma process thabak tawbagi mawongda nainaba paratuna garang giduna karam mamang itu na karam ni yang biaya itu na naina ba masih kisna thabak tahu bagi mawong sinda naina ba tu na aduna discipline or ni yang matam da penas paragi saruk amoina mahi saruk amoina yang betara budi kari ke mana itu explaining with policy making policy execution process and with locating data and providing interpretations which are relevant to the policy problems of a given period tahu bagi policy kemana same bano kemana madu apply tahu bano madu kemana thabo no thopage amasung adugi pausing maruba pausing aitare data ko mayam du khona kemana one thopi adu kadai de thammi kadai de lawi haiba mayam du naina patu pune kona public policy science kisauta naina ris definition of the high tadi public policy science is a systematic and scientific study of public policy scientific study hai de ko mathang manau naina tawba thabak tu ne kona kada scientific study has now scientific ora amani na kona yeng ba me atopa social science ki discipline me and scientific ni yeng ni ado siga kai khena ge ha do atai sing du de assumption ama lawraba matung da kona deductive method has assumption ama lawraba matung da madu tagi madu chumi na traga lali hada hypothetical assumption ama lawraba madu proof to disprove to ba madu tagi sum chingthara ka do ne whereas akhoi gi na kai do makha da gi ne ba thoi ba thodok se kari no haduna yin laga tas laga madu gi samga laga build up to do ne ba aduna from other so is that it has not built up what dominant theoretical tradition or the science is a paradigm the meaning amoina lai ba nati ha ba adu ko ke do makha da gi samga laga saru sin ne ha ba aduna awan thong am khene to kai ba ni sing na de thabak to mo sing do to kai ba me am nai la ba ni ada yam yeng na zarom na ha da public policies as a science so da concept science ni yam systematic study do to ko matam da kari sang ba ge mai mo se kari ne ha bu no ha bu ni na do se natural policy science approach now sidai sida ko na yeng ba si first ko na yeng ba du mo ta holdingai mo mang da masigi naina bagi saruk se kana ahamba wahan to piduna maming piduna masatta pawro page havne masigi credit se hai tare masigi minthon se pana harlo last well the p ko last well masagi mamana ba mage imina bani Daniel learner ka tabudo maming di last well the p like to the policy orientation haba like to the company adu bana policy science haba wakhalon sigi mami ta halakiba the last word ni habani now last word gi one thok the policy science se kai na habanda the culmination of efforts to define a discipline for producing and applying societally relevant knowledge and the policy science ta wise kai na samaj da kana ga da ba mahi gi saru gyan gi saru khara pithok pisin to ba sungba adui thabak to bodu ko policy science and yam chawna habani ana last well gi meaning the policy science have akaknaba amakhaktante mai masak khara legani ko nature of policy science. So aham masak ta kada multidisciplinary to khatu khaba mahi yoba chana patha paring ko mai mayam sigi yeng bayai atu ko ne para multidisciplinary haina the matuk marum yeng bayai haina mayam punsala ka su yeng bayai mate laphala ko then contextual problems ko problem orientation adi mafam duda kadai da kona pali bano haibama and another one is explicitly normative. Normative di chana patha amal lege dabani haba adom di ye habi. Ado last week wakaloni. Now policy science si yam sambada kaidaba rational way habi. Policy science ki kona tabdo tabak se rational habi. Rational way din han di kona tabna din rational haira ka kaidaba wo emotions na vapsa na yati haba. Kadi gumba concrete way ba mang tariba yumpham or gadawa potsing da ying sangadoini vapsana sabasing nati habi. Aduna rationalist si ayamana traditional model di singigo adu ko na harat ngada harase. Rationalist models involves a commitment to scientific planning, meaning an overhaul of the traditional approaches to making of decisions. Aduna rationalist models na ise kedaba matham raw na ba habi commitment to scientific planning adi cham cham thabo na habi nati sequential na si to di si phagani si to sum phagani haduna matham manang na kupna na ba gi thabuk tu akona rationalist model or rationality gi assumption manu da chalina adu pakhata no policy science gi kadaba magi masak ahum khati le ba chauna now kari na matam na si cham cham na to ba ba nate asi technical experts amalegani yare ko experts who are sensitive to the ethical implications of decisions. Now, see the expert the expert the expert will close cooperation between researcher and the government na am policy in same bas haba masung adu thabak to thabak tawani na madu nainariba researcher ni marata government ka langa ka marata kedaba koi achet pama mariama like dabani happening and adu ko kedaba prasad so inform about the power to mamutana khangba and daba koi mai ai tabai but power to suna khangda ba adu ore dabani happening suna khangba mamutana khangba prasama the thabak tawada maruna sarkar amasung nainari ba researcher gi marata achet pamari ma tenamana technical experts. Now social science ko na kaya ba policy kena badu sorana yem matam da sida so ko na not ama wala social science does common to policy science also does analysis of hypothesis predictions causation of optimizing happening ado baru koi tawda de hapatina ti tawdi tawi hapani kana ba distinction to yeng bor ko matamda tawda de hapatina ti tawdi tawi hapani adu madu hai to na sai khana amada na sigi hari basing sida lub khidoba amana atopa makha dagi masisi kado information do out from the society collector oga nainara kada bana. Now the process results in the development of body of potential premises that can be used in deducing conclusion, just as chemistry was able to deduce the existence of new elements before they were discovered. And the season of the science ki mo luka tare the man deduced na never matter yang karpaya. Now, basically one of the pioneers policy science the why Dora is in Yakona mana that constitutes an interdisciplinary approach which is mainly concerned with improving the policy process through the use of systematic knowledge, structural rationality, and organized activity. Potu matumda natin muna ni naragas tuya happening. Adana door na hojika have a sentence to carry have kept that they have the public policy se carry madi de gay have the mahigi gyan gi thabak se yam sam the gyan sungbai thabak ne knowledge sungbai gyan sungbai gi thalama sida kadaba karam mana hena phagata gi haiduna yeng bagi mi yeng ne have ne yara ko ab kadaba substantially condemn discipline, but rather with the improved methods of knowledge and system for better policy making. The gyan du pena sungna chumna sungbagi wakalon dani karamba wakalon policy apha ko thoro na ba na policy manung da kari yawi yaw de ge haidana ni bagi saruti na ti ha china segi ka da door ye in the definition da ge understanding of policy science da ge derive to pa ko wakalon duni am sina ta bata so ko na Carol Weiss na so hai ko policy science is a decision driven model of research aduna Carol na is na kaida ba ko policy science decision of period laura ga to ba thabak ni period lobo ge thabak oita di athang manau na period to silo ni so adugi sequence da yaw se kaida now kari inga da mada decision of the social definition of the social problems kari no ha ba ma khang mo changi now mathang da na khona identification of missing knowledge adugi da ba lauri ba kari no ha do chi do pa ma changi now acquisition of relevant data using social research technique adu khanga ba matung da kari wali kari no khoni ande se masi amada kari changi kari wali ha ma then adu wat pa du gi maru na adu khanga matung da wat pa ba hana lai rabana kari no adi wali bisna kari no ha du khanga ba changi ha bani adu la pa da khona ka da madu du thabu ngona othopa awna mo khona pa da kari changi tangai phadaba information mayam haidare inform pausing adu apena lawsan ba khomjan ba adu karam na khomjan ga da ba social science research ki techniques mayam decision araga lawsan ga ni ha bani mathang da interpretation of problem solution riwan to piba kamai ta ba du da problem ma samasya ma lai gra bani na ma du samasya du gi tang du lai ta ba end point ma por na ba gi da ma ta ko ne ka da ba du wahan to pi ga to ina then wahan to pi na honor ba ma tung da adu ngam na ba de ka da ba kari to ba da ge ha dan de pa to ne that is policy choice and yam samba da policy science and se kam ta de selection of options ne the selection of options to matam da mana yingi ba miyeng se kari no ha matam da amana kada ba policy to kamana semba ga ba ma contribute to the way in which policy making is done kamani yemba ga ha ba ma then amada na kada ba knowledge the contribute to its policy options may percolate into society influencing the way the society thinks about issues the facts of the issues that are relevant as susceptible to alteration and the alternative measures that it considers. The mana na inaba solution to yam sambada knowledge ki para mani amana process ki para. Anish that's okay. Now adugi definition na saru like that mun na hoji public policy as a science da kadaba founder or last well ki definition idea pe last well na yemba meaning public policy as a science. Sorry, public policy as a science to yin. First and foremost, last week we premise is a multidisciplinary or subject amakatang mahi amakatang yung yengata pa ni hapanati ato mayam di yeng happen. So to na the policy science are distinctively multidisciplinary in their intellectual and practical approaches. Because almost every social or political problem has multiple components closely linked to the various academic disciplines without falling clearly into any one discipline, exclusive domain, hence multidisciplinary. Otherwise, the samas ki samasya is every social or political or rajniti ko samasya hai masak na taga saruk mayama hai ba saruk mayama se ako na lai diba mahigi lambi sigi da akak na ba amata mami taba or yengba ba hando ba o iti habanam. It is directed towards the policy process and the part towards the intelligence needs of the policy. And as a good and a high but policy process and company, I'm sure the policy to carry the life at the gap. And multidisciplinary arguments, scholar money, why Dora Sumasiki Wakalonze, Yaya, the mana Policy science must integrate knowledge from various branches of knowledge into a supra-discipline focusing on public policy making. And the policy science na akogi laiba thana gi leijariba mahai lambi paring mayam asdai ke tokai pa saru mayam khomjala matunda achauba supradiam chauba mahai lambi ma sembe ai maduna kanada oraga public policy oraga public policy oraganda mayam ma khomjalaga public policy yembe ai. Therefore to gain a complete appreciation of the phenomenon, many relevant orientations must be utilized and integrated. The port may handle Kangna Bonabada, Arabelami Pambai, Pusanduna, contextual and problem oriented. The contextual, the Akana Pibama Makapo happening, or the Karimba, Samas, the Marilena, Samasya Magamari, the Now, policy science were problem oriented and adopted broad contextual approach. The policy science in Masana Karima Samasyama Layamatu the Samasyado Madudu Kutabak Tontonaba Matugi solution Poranaba Madu Biabake have a problem Poranaba policy science and happening. So Maramaduna Hanto English that is Kadaba. Policy science is in parts is discreted towards public policy processes and in part towards the intelligence state of the policy. Now, Shideshta Hodamukana has one of the policy science can other label no idea the process to Nainabada, a guy put on a singing happening, highly said. Adula Sarvamana Kadaba, Madugi, Tava to Karam the Tauriban, the intelligence part, Aduba Yim, Changi happening. Now, Sigimi Yanks that put a last well like a high. Policy science that ying beaba labiani kakai, one emphasizing on knowledge of policy process and another emphasizing knowledge for use in policy process. Asige distinction se munna to kangjan view adana policy process tawbagi niyoma processing to satha bagi niyoma amana kaidaba high river process ta river kaidaba gi niyom sing to sanaba thap sing to adu the karam na season na kadage for use in policy sciences, or public policy process. See, Maramna Nainari will go on policy science. We have them. Makata, but the last one I haven't said. Last one choose the Perez was that policy science. Nainari will be see one to Yaga. Last one handle of the policy science. Policy science have a city. लोकतंत्र की है मियाम की शासन की सदा भाषा सत्तारी बनो अभी की सब बनी हमने लास्ट वाले हम बोलने से और पॉलिसी शेम्बा है वैसे डिसीजन में क्या है तो बकना डिसीजन में क्या है इसे कोना अतोपा नाकन की अमुक सलाह करते हैं. So in fact, policy science approaches are policy analysis and policy. अदम अनी से मुन्ना हम थोड़ा मतलब देते policy शेम्बा की ज्ञानमा मधुगी ज्ञान तो करम करम पान करते क्या है बाबा. So अनी तो कहते हैं वाला अदुई हम थोड़ा मतलब देते कहते हैं policy analysis and policy process. अनी से लाई है अपने पढ़ाई. Now policy analysis तो करीनो तो ये ना सी policy analysis है दी those models have been dominant. City akona economist na kaya apply ta boto happening kuna kaya ba karang mong ako di empirical analytical precisions ka with rational accuracy subjected to empirical analytical association ba kuna operation research maru niya ma'am tali ko sige tawag mo sini ato rationally accurate o kita ba tawag mo di yen ba na inabadugo niya kuna policy analysis haise now stock की नज़ुक है अब policy analysis की सरुक सीधा करी करी खुलाया ना techniques सीजन लगे है बता अंकों ना वाला बता जी differential equation to queuing model है ना कोई पूरा मकमानी या मथांग मनावा है ना सकन कहते क्या है ना queuing model हम भाई अदु बाना तरह ना differential equations अंकों ना बोले तो हारी बा कहते बा policy analysis के tools अनी की मरुआ रहा idea हम अपना मिशन करना Storkina, primer for policy analysis 1978 like to the Pinamba Wakala Makoina kari hai had the right technical model for doing right. What is the tools to la badi kadawa analysis of land and yaman. Other makata at what witness you have operation research and system analysis is synonyms to policy analysis. Anakadawa at what witness who has a high ever sagi policy analysis it how matam the kadawa system analysis among the kunatam system analysis ka manai natagana operation research ka manai haiduna naina batugi thabak tu bune habane ko adamana sigi tabak sida thabak excuse me thabak manga lambi manga pirami piramba lambi manga do kona yengasi elements por manga sanba na identification of objectives kona kari no to to habisu kanbama now mathangda alternatives madugi mathangda kari kari to payai haiduna yengba that kari oi but tawgadage haiduna tawaya yenga matunda kari tawgada phagadage haidi recommendation pibama haire ba thabak to ontho matunda khona kari phajana tawribra haiduna yengchinba ma monitoring ama then akhona pami ba thabak singdo pandam do phangibra haiduna yengbai thabama evaluating parama so haiduna policy analysis ta yam drabada saru manga ne yawise mukana ge identification of objectives alternatives identify tawba or thiba identify alternatives thira matunda kone kaidaba lambi ma decide tawba tawriba lambi do kaidaba saka ma ko tawba do mi do haigeba adu matunda mo kone madu apply tawro matunda madu kamaina apply tawriba ge chumna tawriba ni yengsanba that is called monitoring and overall kaidaba kone sa yeng patam do pangbra haiduna yengsanba tuna kon evaluating tawi masini policy analysis ni sabak sing or mawanda yaruba maru oiba pochai sing haitare hiramchi now matang na policy process ni so ani le have the policy analysis ka policy process adi thabak tu bone khara ko khara sai haibani adu kaisu upaleti sai rasu masi asobo thabo amni ko kai gina do mona sai dibase kana da sai bana thabak tu la le habana te am sana ye ko thabak policy process policy samai thabak se tabudo mo ai se kai na ban tam da policy process su da changi ba yauri ba mi sangstan ka makhoi gi gyan gi awat pa khara lai habne rationally they are limited habne in terms of knowledge and deciding possibilities maramaduna kai da public process ki hana lai ramuga or mamana tagana policy analysis ta ko na taw ba thabo bong do mapung phaba ngamde habne ada policy analysis ki kai gi sarukta wali ba sarukto kari na me ka pa yai hada sai mapung phada ba ore bani na samaj ka na suraktra bani na kai tawa democratic or ba praja me am jaw ba thaba mo ge tabani habne adu gi satsana thabo mo da chathara badi madu da ko na kai tawa ena mapung phaba policy gi thaba mo ge ne adra mo khona masig ma mayam yawa thaba mo si boy ge hai ta de policy cycle hai na policy process kangu na hai ba policy public policy process bu singthari ba masle illi ba kangu na hai bi marung matuni na di public policy cycle ma laira badi cycle du da yum pham wara badi ka da masagi mamangi policy analysis ki na soihoba haibadi prajagi khanda ba atopa lambi gari gari le maru ida basically prajagi lambi yengsi adugi awodo me ka pangam gani haibani and the public policy cycle da kari kari yawi aru kar komba saruk sing yawi haita di koda mada agenda setting first of all kari no togodo ise haidina agenda mas set togodo ko agenda setting kawi mathana na ko na kai ba lairiba yumpham oigadoriba samasya du munna kumna macha khaina naina baduni ko issue analysis hari se mathangda madugi wakhalon do khangla matunga thabak oina onthongna ba adi swari ba na tagna phari ba saru sindor thabo oina onthongna ba season abadu ko implementation kawi so once implemented to raba thabo oina onthok ke ta di madu ko ni sai do pami ba panam du phangi na traga phangdi ai to evaluate to ki thaba changi na aroi bada once evaluation ti tawrabadi madu phangen na phangya phangen to phangde khangabadi abuk to lotion ba yai hamne sumaina sabak to lotion ga ta di mathang da anoba agenda kari nu hajna mu hawdori sumna public policy cycle ama leibe yai to honba yai hajna kalima public policy process pu nainaba thajajaba kangona policy analysis ki asoiba makogi yang kupa mi yang tu yang kupa di kedo yang iba mi yang tu artha yang kupna apik da hali wahan tu de khala south of mo da process ta pira ga smaina yang be yai hai na hai so these two approaches policy analysis and policy processes makogi aswan ba awat pa laita pati tati hai bane makogi awat pa dune ba ko na mamagi theory singa Harvard Simon hai do kai bounded rationality lay and the makoi the pau apung phana mata phangna te phangda bune makoi na edaba satisfying decision law hai azumara maduna ko na hoji su me chum to ya ji tawdori ba policy process po agara policy analysis po agara masida ko na chum to ba pau sigdo kari o do award pa pau hatan habne adu a journey na de habiti ke do masi tangai pa do sawa mane Makata bada sigi lainari ba ani si tangai phada ba saru mo oi tarabadi kari na yana democratic or mo si ani si ga wat pa si karam na phun gat ka dage hai ta de kona post positivism mana ano multiple dimensions ta yengbe ai hai na khaliba sigi miyeng si tawraga di yengbe yai hai to na mi khala na hai ko now mathang da akona kai da ba multidisciplinary among yengre normal kariba the rationality like then among last part is na kai da process ta emphasize ta bodam hai then the last part in last well ke explicitly normative happening no mama chana patha mama same bagi thabak policy science. The policy science approach is deliberately normative or value oriented. This value orientation was largely in reaction to behavioralism that defines objectivism in the social science and in recognition that no social problems, nor methodological approach is value free. However, the social sciences season and Bakulai Ying about Yang. Amsung chanariba chathariba thabo mo khodimak kadaba masa masagi apamba kharadi loinamak yawe habane bias olo oy hane completely value free oy di habane ko adu idrasu kadaba upadi lai te mo bani ga awon ba kha awat pa khara singse kanana akona post positive mi and the bi habane ana post positivism ki meaning the yang la power of matam da masi award passing se thabak taw da award pa do kanana ka bharap taw no ngami haitani value gi argument value gi emphasis value na direct taw ri ba ko gi thabo mo yang ma matam da ngami habane no value yaw da thabak ti ba yati habane ane ko so arwa bada mu puchal laga last way ka plan ke hai public policy intelligence pertinent to the integration of values realized by and embodied in interpersonal relations, one which prizes not the glory of a depersonalized state or the efficiency of a social mechanism, but human dignity and the realization of human capacities. High human dignity is the question that Yam Sambada, my dear on the Dishude, is at Yauna. Hingba putsiro lai baduni the human capabilities hai kana thabak to ngam bi sakti me ama laiba samaj mo han bi yai ko ngam me ha to hari ba singja awala pala ko matam da kana na mati pani and ki value ki argument da mati pa ya value do argument ko da di thabak thokte ha ne ere go mama sai policy science are where neglected mainly for 3 reasons. The policy science ngal lenga matam na kaida pi to bano adna higher gadi Hana is Harkagi Tori, but some argue the government programs basically contain normative process. Norms Yaman Gitana happening. Norm do not Yaman Gitana process to Yaltobako, norm do Yaman Gitana. Aswan Mukara like giving happening. I don't know. Award Padu, Okana Mekanabokona Bani happening. Now, Matanga Nakwana, scope and expansion of policy science happening. And the Masiga Tabagona on Hopiabagi, Lamika Daidan. Policy science approach address many four topics. When policy science, evaluation, utilization, implementation, and termination. Now, policy cycle today. Agenda setting, then agenda Kanba, implement over, agreement over, recommend over, implement over, evaluation over, then terminate over, agenda set over. Adu cycle to this stage. Adu happening. So, and mainly four topics: evaluation, utilization, implementation, and termination. Evaluation report to Hanasai people having the obvious purpose of policy science was to learn from public programs so that the social objectives could be achieved with the new and alternative programs. Now, when a young liver being signal, can a panba evaluative mechanism absolutely. In many aspects, evaluation was considered to be policy analysis science one. Being Karadikadaba, Wombayadaba, Adam Waraba, what's a Sarukamani, I do not know evaluations. Now, Matanga utilization happening. High about what's I sing to the policy to the season about Mahibur, me, whoever port, whoever current season like happen to Matana, but utilization, I say. The likelihood of success of policy analysis is in unveiling the public policy problems was that the utilization of public policy resources. Public policy the mana to khana tawraga thabak tawraga kadaba paisa na tanbo ragadi kaya puduba lai habane adubo mahai du season kadaba ni habna rego mathagna implementation thabak on onthopagi. It was felt in the 1970s that the real culprit of our policy failure was the administrative delivery system. And now, yum the labor meeting now. I was the ticket about Tin be the delivered out the Rava. What could you much say? Kanaga Yinabada, public policy. Adana. Policy ying iba miyang sindo ying tere happening at the 1970s ano miya malaya the makoy na kay hake madamta implementation strategy that could help policymakers appreciate implementation problems happening and the implementation ki saruk sida yung miyang sangabadi karingam kata ki hamatam da pana por ama policy ma karam na thabat on ko ke habi ki miyang sangani happening now Thabak to ondo kita dekho na madu to kita terminate tab thadar ka to so that next agenda to hobiya na mathagi lambi parin do hobiya na madu ne madu gi sigi miyeng sina kunya pani yang salai sina lising ma chamapan mar phugi ba loiram dai gi saruk or ba phuda mau mar phudara mathoi gi adwai mar phudara ni thoi gi adwai gi wari ni ko am themala tri yang ngai ngai wari ni adu jana ko na kai do thabak to lotion bi wari do hopone. And the policy science advocates focus on programs like policy science the Munangantana Kadaba. Tabak Sing Lower the Bane, I cannot do public policy same like the agenda of BI or BI agenda of the BI put to Tabak and on top of the on the Kamahani. Hena Pajaba Maundu Uhan Bayai, Yang Bayai Heaven. So, I do that the Poto Talavadi Kang Bayai Heaven, them some of that. So, I do not want to see an mumming since a cutback management, sunset legislation, fiscal rent spend on. Simon seen a heaven. How to say this was in response to the demands for a greater economy and reduction in government expenditure. hari bokal je cutback terminate to ma have hena reevaluate to ya na ba bani si ka to thol pano sarkar gi paisa na sapol gi mong la ko tegini mu masa gi on expenditure ni ko adu madu to ke to ba kona thing gi ha bani other program adu ko kona ka to program implementation evaluation utilization termination da study to ba public policy gi nai na ba sing na ka to ba प्रजा के हेन नकनाबा हेन कानागदबा सबक तो ओंदो प्याबा लंबी दी पीब नते हैबने एबा फिर appraisal of policy science approaches होजी लाइरिबा policy science की थगब से केदबा 1990s आवपनी You have to just hold a minute. Slide out mine. Okay. Nice. This Canada, Mokoi say, when I get over public policy, Sakana, Tauriba, Tabak home, and Sitakataba. Expenditure here now, what Patagini happening. Aduga, Haribasi, Akuna, Yang Sabadation, Avatar of Sukataba. Could be implementation, evaluation, utilization, termination. Haribasi, the moon of Putna Yang Salaba Sukataba. Kari the Sota Bagab, the Samas Gaba, Sub Saba. Program advice to Wangambadi Wali Ebony. Adu Asiga Swan Basile, Hyduna Sukataba, policy science key, areas, Momonogi, South already, authority, Hyduna Puna, Masiga property lay, Arabaka. Adu Katani. Now, Matan, the one appraisal of public policy, Adu Pasi Parida, Patrida, a minor Yangasi. Kuibadi nati asi 1990s kan si sama par mafudara adwai lagi paragi paringa moina horopani duna hoji phawda kubi mahigi paringa moina sathari policy science ko koi anu lyric sing hong duna si anu paring sing hong duna ba sathara bona jari adu wo kadaba Yamna Samjabi meeting the Yang Bas Hamas, Tankana Navani Haba meeting to the policy science, one with the Lagre, have that the Lantoga to me, a people meeting the Lagre, but not to type of normative ordina, career from Tui, the Kari Yang, the my Tokatake, Hyduna, Yanguna policy cycle, season Naduna, apply to not avoid Tabaxi, Ho Rabanina. Yam Pomjava, some of the Salut to the land program. Tawata Bokadava, credibility of policy science has been increasingly questioned for its failure to produce empirically and normative truth. Land talks are so upon high Paduga, who get the Pramano in a Putupada and the policy thing I don't know, Pramano and Samsana Putupada, our credit in Nari Habanel. Adana, Karikari Tinabage Habadu. Like Jarabasu on Makatami and Sinkari. I want to see we are quite more in the scientific rationalities. Policy science, Angan Bamatam, the Sukuna, Yamkana, as I do a Paulo Duna, Karamo, and Kanga, I say, Kadava, Sigi, me and Sigi, and Tabak Sing. Adu Masi say, Akuna, Nasiti Kadava, Saba, Praman, Yamno, Ayana, Utopangam Drabarina. Hena South Topa Mayonda, समाज का मरी लेना बला भी मतलब पुथोना बक्कन होना रे मसीदा कुमांग जाफल लेसिदी खना केनिस एंड सेंड ना है मकोइन have matung ina dike da but there is a shift from policy science to policy inquiry to policy networks ko hojina hena inclusive weba ahoba ke kam yam do mention ba lan thok pa yana ba da mata kai na kai tawre policy networks ta nai re networks ati mi mathang samjana ba so policy networks ta emphasize tawre happening ala Tennis and Sadhana networks is regarded as an arrangement characterized by a predominance of informal communicative relations, a horizontal as opposed to a hierarchical pattern of relations and a decentralized pattern of actors' position. I'm saying that network to like that, mapam kudimukta sandupata di pau do mapam kudimukta laudi. Akang nabo office amata mathak te makha sapagi mauta or makha de mathak yun sa pamata phaina network sa di awang anem lai pya ta samana batata phaina lai bani na kai taraba pak na sanna paudu phangani habani aduga maduda yauri ba missing do adugi marakta karino karano haituna laina ba mari mayam du loni yeng pe yai habani arba ala policy networks na kari ngamge ai daw sita ai mamang de level rationality ge ahoba sing poli have mengat pangami aduga ko ta kadaba karamna mengat padu ngami no da hojiki mamang da rationality da based out ta di ko mamang saman na so ge ba information ge awar pa man lai happening mi da adugi information ge awar pa ge saruk to network wai ta di every element or yauri ba pots in the lona samjana ta di ma ko di paudo loina malata di information asymmetry issue or lack of information issues to later ro happen first and foremost aduna masigi power phagi saru or rationality the one be saru to apung phana makeup ngam me happen adu batara badi policy making gi kedro aphaba mai pak pa bise karam na ngam baga da hajiki organization amana natraga na paudu lawdo ro mi duna magi kan reach to bangam bagi sandok bagi area to atuki mati chauthoi ngai di information to la di decision making do phajana tawrani habane adu ta di thabak chu ab chap chaba pam tawham thopa thabak tawgoda lambi du chu haiba ngamani habane odo masi hai tu na su network yenga phawada loina mapung phagani habagi khajabadi laiti haiduna mayam haidabadi nate madugi manung da kareba Padiki maming chapa mi man harbada Douglas targetion na harbu matunda hariba singida mapung phadi pharu habaneba mapung pharu habasing sai gedaba policy science habado samas duga naina bane samas habasidi dynamic way ba ngalite na hong ya aduna galite na hong potu gi maramda naina ba tarabadi naina riba potu su diversity du yamandana mong dum yamandana ko diverse or dynamic or by the item of Hong Sakti Labina, chap chaba concrete or material or suggestion to the Putupanga Mohabana. Then Masija Krab Kutana Habumatamda, policy science Masana, Horopoda Ejum Tokibatuna never. Gyam Sungadoribra, Adugu Madugi Manunda Lainariba, Miga Samna, Marita Lainariba, Mission to Maram the Nainabani. Or Gan Sumgama Nainabani. Nisi mangdan naina bani haina naina ki bani na majugi hai ba saru ani sida yang pamatam da sukimati pak sankare mara madu na kaidaba homa gaita na bani na mapung phawa chap chap on top ga mo hai bani aduni the interplay of knowledge and politics different aspects of the phenomenon become salient at different moments ngai mi ku khuding hong hai bani in other words the conflict between politics and science is as knowledge and adum politics ga kaidaba science of the Sagana Bohana Batumata Yanava award paparing Halem. Secondara, policy science are faced with dilemma methodology problem. Karamba Makalgi Lambi Loga Daki Happy. Sadiki Nana to network rationality or Bataki rationality to Yada than Nakadaba. Head democratic or post positivism low happening. Post positivism the Gamuaduna award for Prazaki Chapta Putupungam the Hajanapana Mulore as a networking idea. Sumna Kaidava Yang Iva Miyang Singse Amana Amabu award Padu puthunarabani na yam samna honaro hayarise edaba karamba lawraga chap chagata ke habisi khangda pakine makal makal me hawpine so instrumental rationality akona ahanbada hawre then mathangda anti democratic oi haiduna koina kedarba achike hariba post positivist ki mulawre then networks ki mulawre so simana laibani na kaita ba chap chap da haibu ngomde adu mi ki maron da power mi da ai wa di has an way na haira medani rationality which is destructive features of the policy science approach destroy and repress individuals and ineffective when confronted with complex social problems and samaj ya ruruba samasya ka ya na ko manam da yenga bona ko matam da rationality do yaude hai but rationality ki meaning the yen ba mean the power former power suno be law wali tu madu mapung phade taw ba kha da isina democratic values what le habani through the citizen participation policy analysis the policy to naina bada mega yen sanna bada madu kumna prajada kari kana hali ki haidon naina bada praja ki participation saru wali ba saru se mana edawa phangan gada bani habani adu wati wale habani yaraba aduna wala bani na akona policy science na hona na amugana mik anawa being yengsi haiduna movement ma hore hona ba hore madu ba hona new directions and perspectives in policy science habani ada makoina rational choice take move out toraga kaitaba policy inquiry da move to bana erega policy analysis policy process like hai then now we are moving towards policy inquiry now inquiry the sapa matam da kaitaba kona laiba miyeng se kari no hai matam da policy science se kaitaba normative or matudagi move out to yara ina now policy science se kaida amana sigi move out or posida kari normative move out is normative tagi move out hai watani but normative means normative but modin ngare chingi wane i bagi yana move out to do kari no hai bene but second is kaitaba hariba matam sida akoi the PCB the public management ana management ki pura ga sarkar gi idea mem pura thabak sarkar gi thabak loisang singda thabak to mong ste apply to ki bama ko na mamang na na ge bidani madu duga ajiki policy ajiki ko na na riba policy inquiry city aduga chane abidi makoina kaitaba management gi idea sing duga chana ba chuna ba matam gi relevance ho na ba now aduna is the continuity of values in policy sciences the normative to move to where but value remains normative ethical values are important for governance in government and society keeping politics and administration separate this argue would theoretically prevent political powers from corrupting by adu namusai na mamangi parasing da kuna theory hobo da hagibani administration politics dichotomy do management la hoboda edaba amuli enforce tawi tat kheba tawde jaga khara da bodi kaidaba madu relevant oitrena naini na hagibani adu management ke public management ki wakha jo pada ani jodi barabar tu na saminai sabjane habane ana si se hausi pawan na hona na mona policy inquiry to su kaidore power ki corruption ki saruk sing se mangan mangam gani haidna or madu value kharap se laga han thap ngam gani haidna jun tawe atopa aduna tabwara gana policy inquiry accountability hai bureaucracy ka would provide the moral safeguard against ethical transgression ka the ethical norms kala thuga sing so phongtopa thingba ngam gani habane now ethics to an important speed having the normative values they have now under ethical and social morality approach ka the individual and groups both inside and outside public services are forced to make concrete ethical and value judgments on a regular basis otherwise ethics to me not as some data one to it that talk to night and night they can tell the policy analysis ka or the value approach or ethical approach of the Kudamo in a developing country like India, where policy making and policy implementation is a serious concern, much work remains to be done on methods and procedures for ethical analysis, and this can be at the top of the policy agenda in the first decade of the 21st century. Now, the Hajik Tabako and a Kana Hona Tomabu Honari happening. policy making is a serious concern. Much work remains to be done on the methods and processes for ethical analysis. Kari tauraga chungadagi haidna munna sida tathokna yengbagi kaidaba awatpa ahoba amadi lady have and normative value to the tawtabe they happening the public company. Now focus on public management. Public management na kay ko na yini banwais. Public management na traditional methods sungati kumamagi do tamra makoy na pamis di kari pamba productive oiba efficient oiba thabak sing oigda bane habani maduni am sambada jate sinara bane public management share a general distance for traditional objective discipline bound societal social science inquiry and prefer the multidisciplinary problem oriented samasya to kaino madu kari for porakada bona pangatu dane and explicitly normative nature of public policy came aduni. Public managers can have scientific functions necessary to organize and implement public policy, that is planning, organizing, and control. I will have and public policy or public policy, ethical public policy analysis. The same is a result of executive efforts directed at affecting governmental outcome by influencing the process, the design, and carry out governmental activity. And a CURI city for the Mabangi management, public management, NP, new public management. Result oriented, I have how you should know what the Kadava. Result oriented people are concerned to fulfill the ethical norms to the or values into the Hantabia Mambra. And according to say, analysis sample matamda rationality to Yadra with the new public management and something like aligned out with the emphasis on outcome at the same time emphasis on ethical parameters. Now continuity of relevance. Hariba the name of say Samasi laying the home body wari in the government ki thabak se adum left and lay happen. Government ki thabak se left and lay government Samas intervene to say Adum Togotabana. Implicit assumption about the benefit of governmental intervention. Sakar Matam Chupada Handanuna Yenabagi Wakalon Amalay have not to tati public policy analysis Togogi came to Makap Kanavalatia. Now policy inquiry Togi Kanavasi. Manav Gibson Babani, modern theory policy realize modern policy. Polity for rational ideologies in which policy inquiry plays the objective models of policy. A reasoning approach has been added advantage for further reasoning the context-oriented and explicitly normative nature of policy sciences. Aduna manai public ka nainadradi upay kayo naiti haban. Rationality na yarway context su tangay pati haban natin context su maruway rationality su kara maruway normative sangi taupatapo ko na tautaba yadaba haibse kanano society ga samnaba sarup natadi ado society ga samnaba kari ethically based rationality sa asiki lo do na kharasu yai kharasu maruoi lo harade aro bada kari no ata rationality do oi ga oira babawda ethics haiba sarup sidi tato pyara ethically based rationality topam thopa chana lonchat Katopani Haduna Ega Parga Tabuamdo, Atugi Nium Chana Patamando, in Katapani. Now, a new approach in policy sciences, reason and a community in society. Samas the lady missing Amasu Mako the labor Wakalon to apply to Watapani Habi Wakalon Mari. Hibani. So me. Ako na muna yalawa at the policy inquiries ethics to ba samas to sandarabadi ay ba aside ka halo rationality tawasu prajagi yogde network tawasu mafung phabadi mali o kharati hoy halna laiba ko laiba argument saru me amdo ethics ki saru to at least address to tati mafung jahon tati samas ki tanga khadaba wali nei me amdo yeng aduni haijara ise kana Adu ithabakto ko gya ita di democratization na isne democratization mamado sunay na mayam punna tauba mi ma'am yahon ba matata tasan ba tu nati ha ana kada ba policy praja gi ohen ge yaw bata di ko ne kada ba democratize ta wa democratize ta wa ha ba di policy analysis democratize ta wa ba di akone ye ga dori ba miyeng si su kai tare sarkar khakta gi or sarkar nataba different layers of government sako in Manipur da na India da ha kana government at the top center natragana state khatang yen ba we have to look at the municipalities panchayat or kana kari jila parishad natra gram panchayat sigi thak kum tharaga layers pe kum yen batai or municipalities as corporation and members ki thata amuk tata and sigi democratized taba participatory ohenba aduga naina ba natana kadaba hariba mamangi horiba mayam do mention mangam mo happen the combined shortcomings of upcome together the praja mayam du kan naina ba different layers ba do kumaga naina ba hai ta di kai tare akona ngasagi yo so ko award par laita ba mapung phaba sai limitations me and people ga samnaraga wali have solution do what the pida naina rapida kena kakhala kani habani democratization do ngai phate habani tau democratization do ki sarugam ho pe yai na ta independent yengbe ai but ke da ba khona network analysis habani sai do magi last well gi me do phangana ba miyang or mi do phang yadi ke da ba network sai the last number of public government different institutions habani hierarchy aba layer horizontal or any verticality to layer plane on layer ni ka aduna mashisu tum phai habani ba aduna layers man to kumdaraga horizontal yengera whatever you do it ko adu phai habani kola hani wise now siguma miyeng se abuto ngasai da do hari basis amana traga amada ahoba na ba dum laibagi wari ni adu kaida ba lora pada phana yam no honara basu kari gumba ahoba kharati lei habani hari basi amuka na jai na kari ba kari da wali ne da chap chana sini haiba ngam ta base kari gi miyeng da so public policy gi miyeng da karam ro miyeng da se dynamic or bana maram mo da ko dynamic or bana maram da masigi asomba amadi lai kani masi madi noju lari irpa ansaya pada yaw namna hajin banate akoi mayam na our policy science naina ba mi sing yana ra ba khopama mana lambi mana awat pa oba kharadi laigani kaina dynamic world amata operate tawna adu kari no dong sai wala le do mi na walan be institutions na walan be or institutional actors institution the act of the yaw mi sing different range na go we to mara mayam no or be ba tabo high ba democratized or ba networking from the different layers that we have ke meetings na kari hai da ko na sa ga ho da models ki aho base kari no chap chana kari to bata ki habatu di ta ko ngam ki dai bani adu hojiki khuna nei nari ba mong sida no na mun tara madi changam basu yai karam ba mong da policy do nei na ka ta ke yeng ka ta ki habatu ta pane habati layers by layers kumduna institution by institutions by interconnected tawduna madu de yawri ba mi khudi madu gi pom lawduna agenda do nainari bodo problem do mun na yenguna kubna naina bagi thabak ama tawba ye haduna lambi ama habdi process ama ta eba ergo democratized one networking models na rationality asoy bodo overcome tawraga kaidaba lambi ama di ta eba na sine ba kwaidagi maru word ise policy science ki asoy ba mayam lejara basu hojiki matam ga chana na ba democratic or ba networking or ba networking based over different levels of government, different levels of institutions, different people working across the institutions, as well as the society, the actors may have flatly interconnected information loiness share toroga and apava restality tabayaba ko kuigeda pau lawang the bagi mapung phabri thabakto and a pangali haiba sineba ana ko parasigi horo pada ge budai na jilo salisni model singna sabsaba samaj ki maramda kari thabak tawragadaga phagadage haibadu ngamde madugi award bado ngasigi policy science approach ki makhada policy analysis ke model makhada madugi lambi amadi tai habisi lambi du kadai dia kata different layers different states or the localized state center from government authority mayam mun yin kata bani sini lore thank you